1, 2. 1, 2.
Mic check, mic check. Can you hear me? Huh? Did you hear anything on the speaker?
Yes, there is some. Looks like you must just check back to your level meter.
Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. Can you say something?
Hey, 1, 2.
Good morning, honourable members, morning MEC, good morning to officials from the department. If we can just settle down, and if there's others outside, the team can just call members in so that we can start. bit over time. I hope nobody minds if when the person is talking you can take your mask off, but when you finish put it back on, if that's okay. So firstly, good morning. Link that has been publicized for social media for members of the public who might decide to watch the proceedings on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. I believe that has been advertised by the communications team in the legislature. There was a camera there. I don't know where the camera is. Is that the one over there? Oh. Okay, so you're recording it now, live on social media. Okay. So I just wanted to alert everybody that we are live on social media, and we will get a...
So, Jeff, I can take that off the table. We must just discuss the format. It's a massive document. It might require a day of the committee's time to take the committee through it, but in principle, we have sharing of that. Chair, we often, and I'm going to, we, as in the GMA, fall into the trap of doing the work that needs to be done that we've been allocated without being able to work, for example, with Metro Rail on corridors. So coming to Minal's question, we would love that the province could identify 4 critical rail corridors, and we as the GMA work with PRASA. We know that PRASA's commissioning the Mopani line again. I'm not sure if that's up and running, coming into Pretoria. But I see no reason why that could not be better integrated at Pretoria Station with Gautrain, then continuing on. Similarly, the Malota corridor should be a priority project. And this would then lead into the question around integrated ticketing. So could it be that someone who started a journey in Mabopani could end up in Johannesburg having paid one price on 2 modes? And that's where we're supposed to be going, Chair. That's the integrated ticketing project. But in our defense, we in the GMA up to Sandton. And as I said, the issue there comes in terms of saying, at what price is that route offered to people who are coming in from that area? Okay, I'm not sure if I've missed anything. Maybe just one last comment. Remember, Ledwaba, you mentioned this thing about money that's not available for other modes. One of the issues which is, I think, bedeviled transport in the country is that money is unspent on rail. The returns from PRASA to the National Fiscus have now been ongoing for 5 years, saying, let's take money that's already urgently being used elsewhere. What we are also saying is that there needs to be much more private sector investment in this. If we see the value that's created around well-run stations, why can they not be contributing as well? So we think that there's a balance between the public fiscus and what the private sector should be. So I see one last question from Member Mabunda. This is in terms of the consultation with stakeholders on what we call the phase 2 from Little Falls through to Jabulani. That has not happened yet. What that would be is that would fall under the route determination process. And once this tender is concluded, we would be able to start that and identify stakeholders in 2022. I think I've covered the major points, certainly.
Thank you very much. MEC, over to you.
I just want to, thanks, Chair. I just want to raise a few points, not in any manner suggesting anything concrete, but just to essentially flag the issues. One is that we've got to be very considerate of the the problem that we're seeking to solve. Because, and also, what transport is appropriate to solve a particular problem. And that leads me to also raise the issue about, we also have to be consideration of the commuter segment that Gautrain is looking at, because otherwise we could conflate the deeper problems of public transport in general and want to put them on the, perhaps believe that Gautrain can solve all of them. There are problems that cities can solve. Joburg, particularly the big metros as it relates to transport, there are issues that PRASA can solve. There are issues that Gautrain can deal with. Some of them you can have buses like the bus contracts we're dealing with, solving them. And that talks again to the commuter segment, to the traveler, the type of traveler that we're talking to. So I'm just saying that we shouldn't try to make Gautrain everything for everybody, with good intentions of solving public transport problems. So the market segment that we're seeking to address is very much important for me, that we take that into account. And the other issue, Chair, is just if we want to deal with the affordability and the price, I think we should deal with that across Gautrain, not only for expansion. So if there's an issue about cost and affordability, let's deal with that as it relates to the pricing schedule of Gautrain and who does it affect. I thought, and maybe I could be creating a difficulty for you, CEO, but I thought that in the expansion we've also talked about the principle of price, a hybrid model for pricing, because I know that is under consideration. Those that, as I understood, will be introduced into the expansion, which is not currently happening. So I was just saying that if there's an issue about that, let's talk about it comprehensively and not just in an isolated issue of an expansion. But I know that that matter has been looked at, and there's a very good model that they are talking to. The third point I want to raise is that we also not just narrowly look at the rail line as just a mode of public transport, coaches on the road. We must also look at the transformative potential. There's a good report released by President Hedge, which talks to what Gautrain can do to the economic space of Gauteng, raising property values, creating crowding in investments. And I hold the argument that if it were not Gautrain, certain parts of this province will be a ghost town. The property market has actually benefited a lot from the expansion of Gautrain. So I'm saying when you expand it into certain areas, we must look at the multiplier effects that can have on transforming and changing the space of the province, so that we're not dealing narrowly with a coach that carry commerce. That could be a dangerous way of looking at what is the investment potential, what does it do to the space economy. So I like the disruptive nature of the investment as it goes into the western part of the province. We should look at the socioeconomic benefits of that. So Chair, the last point I just want to say is that, this thing, rail, particularly passenger rail, it's only dealt with by PRASA when the province has a success model, a success story of a better rail transport system. If you look at infrastructure, quality of infrastructure, safety, and the performance of Gautrain, we had actually even put a proposal, and I've directed that, you may not be aware of this, CEO, I've directed the Transport Authority to convene a meeting of ourselves, yourselves, Tech, and I'll be in the meeting, to check if we can agree on a pilot site for a partnership between if we can't just reach consensus on that without anyone feeling that they're decentralizing power and all that. So it's a discussion that we want to have. There's a particular corridor that we want to look at as a test case. We know currently PRASA is not operating there, so they've got nothing to lose. And we're saying to them, shouldn't we look at that? Because we mustn't also just look at GMA and Gautrain as there are skills, there's knowledge, there's best practice, there's a lot of things that we can tap into the GMA and Gautrain space, which could help with mass transit like PRASA. So we will come back to the committee once that discussion has taken place so that we can look at the rich knowledge GMA that we can tap into to help PRASA. So I just wanted to flag those issues. We mustn't also forget that transport rail planning, it's a long-term thing. So the long-term planning nature of this we should also have it on the back of our mind. And be very careful of short-term quick decisions that react to this and that over matters that might have been planned over a long time. We also need to look into that. And I think the idea of getting the feasibility report for me will be great, so that we could see what are the variables that went into looking at the whole issue. But I think at the end of the day, the issue of accessibility, affordability of Gautrain critical. And also, once the transaction has come to a point where the asset is handed over to GMA from the concession, there are also going to be benefits there of the asset sitting with government. Huge infrastructure overlays on the current network. Some of them could be offset by the time the asset is handed over. So there will be opportunities to look at that. Some of the issues, particularly costs.
Thanks, MEC, and thanks to the team from GMA. Member Mabunda, your hand is up before we conclude on this matter.
It's just a discussion about what if and what not GMA or Gautrain included in the scheme of the transport provision in the province. I, however, also agree that in terms of efficiencies within the rail system, we have got a model example of of Gautrain. For those of us who had the privilege of getting into the PRASA trains, who will understand how they operate in terms of inefficiencies within the system, in terms of not only cost but the respect of time. I mean, at some point during the October Transport Month, and someone told us that for him to get into Johannesburg from Springs, he must wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And if you look at the time distance that he needs to travel, it's a 30-45 minutes. So we definitely need efficiencies in the system. So this working in silos within the system, it's actually not assisting. It's just an issue of concern. But also, because if we're going to find a working relationship between the two, it was not only going to deal with the issue of affordability, but also the issue of efficiencies and good. Because if you look at it at the moment, we've tried it with the BRTs, And I take note what the MEC is saying, that the BRT, it's one example or a means of taking traffic off the road into the bus system. But unfortunately, because of how we are unable to operate the BRTs, it's resulting into the impact. Can I continue? Yes, it's a matter that continues to impact on other modes of transport. Look, and I think one of the reasons or the importance of sharing the feasibility study or the reasons behind particular decisions is that some decisions that were made 8 or 10 years ago could be relevant now, some could be irrelevant. I mean, for instance, the MEC has been at pains in explaining the Gautrain Freeway Improvement Project. And it's a decision that has been made by this government. So at the time, we thought it's the best decision. And unfortunately, now we realize it's not. So we must never, because a decision has been made, we must just continue perpetuating the implementation of a decision without looking into the after effect of that decision. And hence, I'm asking you, and I see you tried to answer the question, but not correctly, or as I have expected, because I said, in our consultation, and I hear you are saying it's a process that has not started. And in our consultation, who are the likely stakeholders? And the reason I'm asking this because you talked of the Triple P, whether it's the Bombela Consortium or that consortium, as it's done in the in the BRTs. In the BRTs, there's an element of tax. We are going to extend the route further. I think there should be some consideration into absorbing some of the taxi operators into running a rail system. Because at the moment, taxi operations or the minibus taxi operations in the country remains the largest in terms of passengers and in terms of cost that is associated with it. So in whatever decisions we are making, if we are not going to be considerate in terms of how we reduce the taxi operations off the road, we will be forever have this problem that we are having today. Because if, for instance, a train, and sorry for wasting your time, a train passes via Marlborough to Sente, how many of people of Alexander catches a train to Sente? Because one, it's affordability. And we cannot, and I'm not saying Gautrain must carry all that burden, but we must create a means in which there's segmentation of all this market. There's people who need, business people who want to catch a train in Hatfield and be in Sandton in 15 minutes. They can afford it. But we must also look into this other segment of the market. Thanks, Chair.
If I can just say before I hand over to MEC, that point, I think somewhere we raised this during the deliberations on the patronage guarantee costs and this issue of Marlborough Station and what impact is it having and how is it actually servicing residents of Alex came up there, and I think you've just amplified that point. So I just thought I'd make that. MEC, back to you.
I'm sorry, man, I shouldn't be coming back, but there's another matter that I'd like to deposit with the portfolio committee. And that is in line with what I said, all that. And that part is not coming out very well in the reports and the work that we're doing. But I was just saying, Chair, the way I see this asset is that we're not investing enough to deal with it, and most importantly, depolluting the road. I just wanted to put that issue that, for me, that is the next strategic focus where we must look at Gautrain. I just wanted to raise that issue.
No, thanks, MEC. And I think, just to conclude on this, I always talk about and it's always been my dream that when I travel abroad, for the sake of my friend over there, I'll be careful which countries I mention, but let me mention Moscow and Ukraine, where I went to in 2019. Okay, all right, thank you. Over to you, and we are ready to listen on the issues of Gfleet.
Okay. Good morning, Chairperson, MEC, and honourable members. I'm the seconded acting CFO at Gfleet from the department side in terms part of its intervention plan to assist Gfleet in terms of its turnaround strategy. Chairperson, the actual response that we've provided to the committee makes reference to the annexure which we've attached. So considering that the documents have been sent, I'm not going to go in detail of the actual response, but more around the Annexure A, which focuses around our audit improvement plan, as well as it reflects the progress that we've made in terms of implementing that plan as of the 15th of October. And we have made obviously subsequent improvements or achievements based on the target dates as we've set. Chair, just to mention that the plan itself has been provided to at the SCOPA, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, and we've also presented it to our audit committee who have given us insight and inputs which we've incorporated as part of the plan itself. Chairperson, overall in terms of the plan itself, the way it was crafted based on addressing the underlying root causes and not specifically just addressing the commenced with implementation. We can also state that 10 items out of the plan have already been implemented, including the aspects relating to the qualification, and there are 12 items which are still in phase of being implemented. Now, the focus areas in relation to the plan specifically is around one, preventing issues of material misstatements that continuously happen within our financial statements. Chairperson, we've highlighted, as I said, the fundamental principles. One is to build the capacity within the entity. The underlying challenges of the entity's capacity constraints is reflected in its audit outcome. Not having the required skills and competence to perform the functions that are required. Unlike the department, the basis of preparation of financial statements is similar to the Gautrain Management Agency in terms of the GRAP, which requires much more detailed skills and competence in that particular regard. So on each item, we have focused one around dealing with the issue of addressing the aspects of qualification, but at the same time, regarding the restatement of the financial statements, we have already at this stage re-advertising of critical positions of that the MEC has approved. That's the Deputy Director for Asset Management and the Director for Finance. As of today, the adverts will appear for us to in terms of the media, for us to then consider applicants that would come in. The aspect of restatement, Chairperson, unfortunately, this area will not be totally eradicated in the current financial year, based on the fact that we have to address the qualification, which has an impact on the prior year financial statements. So while to prevent it from recurring, it is something that, just to highlight the committee members, that it will be something that we will see based on the fact that we are addressing the issue. Regarding the areas of qualification, Chairperson, I can indicate that we've already addressed the two areas of qualification. We've already also then requested, in a formal letter we've written to the Auditor General, requesting them for an early audit so that we can identify any issues. And you recall, Chairperson, I think the senior manager did indicate that they are considering that and will look to perform that early audit before the end of the financial year, so that if there's any issues that emanate, were able to rectify it before the actual financial year end close. But from the assessment that we've done, we don't foresee any challenge. One, the capacity challenge, but two, reviewing all our standard operating procedures, reviewing our policies, which in terms of the target date, we've set on as the 31st of December of this calendar year, and we are on track to meet that deadline. There's quite a lot of documents that personally myself I've signed off for us to process in terms of the necessary approvals. The one aspect which had an impact in terms of our APP, in terms of the performance information, was the defining of the aspect where we are contributing or our reporting on contribution to townships development. Was that it wasn't properly defined. We have had consultations with the Office of the Premier as well as the colleagues from the DRT, and we have resolved that matter in terms of clearly defining the TDI, and we've incorporated those adjustments as part of the revised APP, which was submitted to the MEC for approval. As well as the strengthening of our aspect relating to annual performance reporting. We have improved on our controls that need to be implemented in relation to technical descriptions, as well as updating the APP in relation to any challenges that we foresee there. One of the concerns that I had, Chairperson, when I joined the entity was I called it almost criminal that we can't pay our suppliers within 30 days. To pure understanding of how systems need to operate, retweaking systems. We have already done that. Processes have been implemented, as much as we're saying that it's still in progress here, but as of this date, it has been implemented. And I can safely say that for the end of October, Chairperson, we can report that we've paid 99% of our suppliers within 30 days. So the improvements are already being felt in terms of that. Has already been addressed as well with the support of DRT's legal matters, legal team. The asset register itself, we are in the process of looking to migrate our asset register to the SAP system, which would help us. At the moment, the system is operated on a manual basis, which is quite tedious and is prone to errors and omissions. So we are in the process, and we're hoping by the end of this financial year, that system will be officially migrated in relation to that. Quality of the financial statements, I think, Chairperson, I've touched on the matter that it relates to capacity and people just performing incompatible functions because you're having somebody that's a preparer and a reviewer at the same time. And that forms part of the organizational structure, I think, Chairperson, that the MEC will talk on in relation to maintaining a system of how you manage your assets, etc. At this point in time, we're quite heavily dependent on the department in terms of the overall system, which is the integrated fleet management system, which operating system for the entity in terms of its business. The move towards the integrated fleet management system would bridge between the financial system, the business operating system, etc. And that progress, there has been some significant progress. However, it's a system that's going to be developed over a period of time. And in terms of some areas of priority are already being prioritized in terms of, and that system is being built by the Department of eGov for us. And I think, yeah, just on that item, Chairperson, I think it's item 20 that the system is being in the progress of being developed, and we unfortunately are targeting a longer period, but that's just to get the whole system operating in terms of integration. Chairperson, that's in a summary our audit improvement plan, and I'll take any questions later. Thank you so much.
Members, I think that's an indication of the seriousness with which the regression that we were briefed on last week in terms of the audit opinion. I've gone from
most of the officials here, they are attending that meeting. The issue that the audit committee had raised quite strongly was they need to have a very strong CFO for Gfleet. And that was seen as a critical issue. And that's why we decided to, second our chief director, governor to Gfleet, because that was considered a very strong matter. And you can already see with what he's presenting and the short space that he has been there, that the audit committee was right about the need for a very strong financial management capacity there. And so to that extent, I think I'm quite sure that the next audit cycle should give us better outcomes. And you can see that a number of these issues are being dealt with in the audit improvement plan. And the targets that have been set even towards the end of the financial year. The last point is that we have taken a decision that we must move Gfleet from being a branch in the department to be a proper public institution. Obviously, if we were to go into a legislative process, it might prove difficult. Maybe in the long term, but we want to make sure that Gfleet is not a unit in the department. It's an entity. And we have already agreed that we need a roadmap towards Gfleet being a government component, so that the positions of CFO, let me say the entire finance and corporate services, because the core business is there, but the dependency is on the corporate services and finance. Those functions, Gfleet must have its own corporate services. That is going to be very, very critical in stabilizing Gfleet. And I guess we will produce a roadmap of how we're going to do that. But I think the decision to deploy Pueblan there was a very correct decision, and I like the passion with which he's dealing with the issues, and I think he's prevailing over these issues in a very good way. So I just want to leave it there, Chair, but I think the sooner we stabilize Gfleet on a more sustainable, more stronger structure than the current arrangement, it will be able to attract skills to manage its site, and I think it will have its own structure, and it should be able to run. You can see GMA, Transport Authority, they are beginning to be, we're seeing the benefits of proper entities, and that's where we must take Gfleet to, and that's what we have agreed upon. Just those 2 points, Chair.
Thanks, MEC. Let me then check with members if there's anything that anybody would want to raise in terms of what's been presented to us. Member Du Plessis, Member Mabunda, you had your hand up.
Chair, thank you very much. I just want to raise the questions that we raised last time, just to bring the APC on board, what was said. And I think the 2 things that we raised was that problem around the budget that was done wrong, and then only afterwards did they find out about that. And the other point that we made was actually a point that of commitment to the department, where they said that monies that was owed by them from other departments, they actually made note of that, send out letters, and that money was in. So, and I think after this presentation, I want to agree with the MEC that I think they're on the right track. They look like they're moving forward, and I do also expect that we'll see much better results in the next cycle. Thank you.
Member Mabunda.
Thanks, Chair. I also wanted to appreciate the improvement plan. It looked like they are in the
Acting us as an irregular expenditure. I know that some members in this committee their party issued a statement attacking the department on a huge irregular expenditure. when they know for a fact that this irregular expenditure relate to these tenders, that we as a department, actually in most respects, we've been blamed for a matter that we're not supposed to be blamed for. Because these are old contracts that were managed at national. But because the irregular expenditure reflects in our books, then we are taking the beating for that. The second area where it hit us is that it causes under expenditure. In the last financial year, I think members would know, almost $1 billion under expenditure. Why? Because, and this is also technically not an under expenditure, Chair. These are penalties that causes, these are penalties for buses not performing. These penalties will always be there. If you don't operate, you don't claim. We don't pay you. And these penalties are called under expenditure. It's a technical issue. So they affect us in both respects. And as an irregular expenditure and under expenditure, they are too huge amounts, too high. So to that extent, I'm quite hopeful that because the tender is advertised, whatever that the court says, we are set for a new regime. And let me also just say to members, the painful part for me was when we were taken to court, national government did not support us. We were really on our own. And they said they would like to wait and see. The little matter of wait and see. So to that extent, we are the only province in this country, and since 1998, that has taken a bold decision to advertise. And that put us on a very good basis to open a new chapter. So the tender closes on the 7th. We'll do evaluations, and we'll be able to sign a new regime, which will mean contractors, when they operate, they'll be able to, the routes will be lucrative. We don't expect penalties that are high, because the contractors, the bus operators, as you know, they currently abandon the routes. They don't operate because route and the profit you make, the cost is too high, the profit is zero. Actually, they operate on losses. So we will be able to package this in such a way that we don't expect to have high penalties, which will be called under expenditure. The last point, Chair, is that we have plugged in a 30% black economic empowerment for designated groups. So the transaction is also very transformative in the sense that we will be able to deal with the issues of empowering designated groups. And that 30% spend is go back. This environment and be able to incorporate and integrate designated groups. So there's the 30% is clearly designated in the tender, and it's non-negotiable. We will be able to reach targets with respect to the transformational aspects of this transaction. So that is where we are, Chair, and that's where I'd like to leave it.
No, thanks, MEC. And let's hope that there's no disruptions to the process. But I guess we'll have to also be watching that space as to the judgment of the court. Thanks for that. Member Ledwaba, I see you trying to switch your mic on or off. Do you want to say something? Very briefly. Thank you. Anybody else? And then Member Nell.
Thanks, Chair. I thought the MEC would start from the beginning, that it is almost more than a year when he had made commitments. One of the commitments that he made when he failed to deliver on the deadline that he made, have there been any consequences to this effect? Because I remember at some stage you spoke about concurrency, wherein the national ministry had to come in, all sort of things that one would have thought that before you made that commitment, you would have looked into all those prerequisites or things that you needed to do before. So, Chair, I'm afraid to celebrate because we have gone through this process before. And now it is even compounded by the fact that it's before the courts of law, according to what he's saying. And this component that he's talking about, that there has not been support from national, it keeps me worried, because we were told that you needed concurrency from the national ministry. For more than a year, we were only changing deadlines time and again. And secondly, Chair, the issue of the under-expenditure, the MEC can't be surprised. Because if we have money we don't spend, I'm not sure what is it that the MEC expects from us. It doesn't matter whether there are justifiable reasons or not, because there are processes that need to undertake in the event we are unable to spend. I even said in the last meeting, Chair, that is why there are provisions for adjustment budgets. That is why you can go back to Treasury and indicate difficulties that would make you not to be able to spend, so that by the time we get money, you know you are going to spend it. I mean, we approve budgets, fiscals, and everything indicating that we'll be able to spend this money. But if we don't spend it, and then we are told that, no, you can't complain because there was COVID. You can't complain because of the 1998 contracts that were there. As if we only learned last year that there were 1998 contracts that were there. It's something that we've been doing it as a legacy project for some time. So I do not align myself with that view, and I must indicate that I'm one of those who are disappointed that 1.2 million rand that has not been spent. To take it further, Chair, is that we were told last year, if I'm not mistaken, that there are officials who were taken through around the issue of transport, around this subsidy thing. So that intervention, I have thought that by this financial year, the under expenditure will be less compared to the previous ones. But instead, it became worse. I think it doubled. To the extent that even next year, I think we're going to have 1.3, 1.4 billion rand underspent. And we can't be expected to keep quiet and say everything is fine. And I did indicate before, in the third quarter last year, to say the under expenditure that we had during the third quarter, we are likely to double it, and it is doubled now. And I'm saying this with authority, Chair. This year is 1.2 billion. Next year is not going to be less than 1.4 billion rand. And we are expected to keep quiet. Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much. I'm glad the tenders are being advertised. I think it's about contracts are in fact managed on behalf of the national department. In other words, it's something that we inherited. It was devolved to us, and the money comes with that. So it's not a budget item we would have had the function. But what I do think we need to start looking at, firstly, is I would hope that there's going to be some form of SLA built into the contracts about the roadworthiness of the buses that's going to be used, the fleet, because I think up until this point, what is on our roads in terms of these subsidised buses, which they're not short distance, I mean, they're fairly long distances, and they do be. So that's number one. Number two is I would hope that we can start looking at how we can transform that funding to a better mode of transport, whether it's investing in, although it will have an initial capital cost, establishing BRT or rail amongst those routes as alternatives. I don't think we're going to be able to eradicate all the bus routes, because I don't think all of them are necessarily suitable for BRT or rail, but I do think that we need to start look at planning on how we can replace some of those routes with safer modes of transport, which is rapid as well, because a BRT does give you a rapid. So I would just hope that we'll start a project to at least look at the feasibility of that, because I don't think we can continue with these bus contracts forever. Because in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we might be sitting in the same situation where we complain about the roadworthiness of the buses and all these kind of things. Thanks.
Thanks, Member Nell. Let me see. Over to you.
Yeah, let me start
But
with
can I just, before you,
Okay.
but can I also just say that, I mean, I think, I'm going to say this, that when I came into this committee, I mean, we were briefed on the roadmap, and we were given the deadlines by when the contracts were going told, because I was looking at my notes now, that there was a failure by officials to meet deadlines that had been set. But I think one thing that, and so maybe, but I'm sure you'll respond to Member Ledwaba, but I mean, I think we must welcome the fact, even since I've been here, we must wait to see what the courts say. But I did make a note here, MEC, and I was looking at it now. And my notes do talk about the fact that there was, yeah, and I made a note here, unless I've made it wrong, but where the national, so where would it be now that that the department doesn't seem to be supporting? I know you mentioned in terms of the court process, but does that the original, what we were told that the national minister had indicated we can proceed to advertise, does that still stand, or is that also under question as to whether they still support that? I just wanted to get clarity, because I've made notes on that. So I just wanted to get clarity on that. Thanks, MEC. Over to you.
No, Chair, thank you very much. I think first let me welcome the point you and Honorable Nell are making in appreciating that we have traveled a very difficult journey, very complicated, and that you welcome in the fact that finally this tender is advertised. I think I would like to thank you for that. I just want to clarify that the minister did, remember we had to apply to get his permission, it was granted. So we wouldn't have proceeded to advertise without that support. The support we didn't have was in the interdicted applications that were brought in. But I am told that the department, because there's going to be another phase of the court case, which is about whether we had to advertise or not, the merit of the case. So the current court applications were interdicting us from advertising. But there's still going to be the merits of their arguments, which is not interdict so much, but about whether we had to advertise or not, and are we really violating the terms and conditions of 1998. Also, it will national will join that, but they couldn't join us in the interdict. They want to see how it will go. I think it's also important for them because they also are in a difficulty with these contracts. Those 1998 versus a new chapter, and the fact that they are not cost effective for the operators. So they are also looking for a transition, how to deal with this situation. So if you like, we are going to be a test case of what direction this is going to take. So they are also looking at us, but you are much more stronger when everybody's there in the court case. So their lack of support for the interdict, whilst of course I thought they would have joined us, but I think in the principal support is there. Look, you're taking a good initiative, let's go see how it goes. And of course, they will reposition themselves. So I'll say to you, let's not read too much into that. It's not the other issue is that I just want to say to the committee, whether the court says negotiate with the current contract holders, or whether the court says award the bid, which will not create an under expenditure. Because if we negotiate, we will be negotiating a completely new contract. It will address the cost issue. So either way, it will clear this matter. It will deal with the audit issues around this matter, either way. Whether you negotiate or you proceed with it. And then we agree on standards. Roadworthiness, the quality of the bus, and taking out the old buses completely. So I want to assure you, we've already appointed a sort of a legal transaction advisor in the industry. The taxi guys abandoned routes, said they are going into BRT investments. Some of them are beginning to complain because of poor performance. There's a big resistance in Swani to transfer licenses or permits to the BRTs because they're saying this thing doesn't really work the way we thought it will. So the BRT model has to be looked at, and I commit to look at that. Now let's go to the issue of the commitments that were made to advertise these tenders and changing of timelines and consequence management. I'll say to you, Chair, it's true that commitments were made, and that's how we should work. We must set targets for ourselves. There's one radio station that said to me, you once set a target, you didn't meet it. And I said to them, but I'll still continue to set targets. We can't work, because if we work because we are scared we'll miss them, accountability and transparency about why targets are met is precisely part of our work. And we mustn't shy or fear setting targets and making commitments, because only in that way we can work better. But when you look at this particular transaction, this is an extremely complex transaction. Because, for example, one of the issues that confront us from time to time is that when you move one step forward, there are legalities that comes your way. Some you could have reasonably foreseen, but some of them get raised because also the legalities of these things are very complex. There were issues about us having to consult with municipalities. So I'll say, I don't think simply because you have set a target, you plunge yourself into a crisis simply because you said the date is X. I think that will be committing suicide. That will be fatal. It will be poor management. If you set a target and there are new things that comes up, and when you evaluate them, you can see these are risky issues, you have to adapt and adjust. That is what leadership and management is about. Than to simply say, because we said, and so we said, then we shall face whatever consequence that's there, including biting the bullet that you can tell this is going to kill you. So good management is precisely about making adjustments, adaptations to risk, and mitigating risk. And to that extent, I'd like to say to you, I'm actually very happy with the fact that we have reached this stage, and there's no turning back, and we've bedded this thing. Either way, whatever the court say, we are set for a new regime, which is the primary objective. And to that extent, I would like to ask the committee to join me in this celebration. There will always be doubting Thomases. They are part of the process. We welcome doubting Thomases as well, whether this will be achieved or not. But we are navigating a complex terrain that nobody has navigated, and nobody's route, only us. And I'm quite happy with where we are. I would like to leave it there, Chair.
No, thanks, MEC. Thanks for that, and we await the process, the courts, etc. But hopefully that we can see progress being made in terms of the contracts that have been advertised, etc. But let's leave it at that. I want to close on this matter. I'm also looking at time. Opportunity to engage on this next year as well. When we get an update as to where we stand, what the progress has been. So,
Chair, on a lighter note, just one sentence, Chair, just to say the doubting Thomas is all along were right for the past 2 years, because they did say at the time that what we're saying is not true. And they were proven to be right up until now. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Let's move. Let me see, there's the issues of the transport infrastructure, to speak to that. Also the new organisational structure and where we stand in terms of that. And then there were 2 roads. I'm not sure if you've been briefed on those roads.
Yeah, I'll talk to them.
Okay, so,
I'll deal with them when I deal with infrastructure.
all right. So let me hand over to deal with the rest and take us through. Thanks,
Yeah,
Elise.
let's start with the organizational structure. The long and short of the organizational structure, and we have sent you the documentation. Am I right? Sent. Okay. When you read our report on the organizational structure, you'll see 2 major issues. The document has been sent.
Let me see, can I just get, Mr. Mbisa, have you sent them out to everybody?
Yes, Chair, I've sent.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it has been sent, Chair. We all the documents. We have never failed to send documents. Yeah. But if they are still in your email boxes and in transition, we don't have control over that. But I just know that we always send documents. Yeah. We always do, Chair. We always do. There is it. The long and short of this document is that we have Minister of Public Service and Administration, and therefore the organizational structure process is led, driven, and overseen by the Premier's office. They have done an excellent job in the sense that we are now at a point where we are wrapping up this issue. By the end of the financial year, next year, March, we would have submitted the organizational structure to the Minister of Public Service and Administration for their approval. There are of job evaluation, job grading content, so that you can also, evaluate the job content, the job functions, and the job profiles of the posts. So and that is a very difficult matter. But we are quite confident, Chair, that by the end of the financial year, we will have a new structure. In the old structure, there are posts we have prioritized, and we have worked on a principle that, and we have agreed with the unions to prioritize some of those posts and fill them, especially in corporate services, because the corporate service structure of government is almost the same. So I just want to say to honorable members that this is another area of audit queries and audit outcomes, matter that stand between us and clean audit, just like the past subsidy. So to that extent, I would like to just leave it here and say, give us the end of this financial year, the last quarter, we should be able to send this to the Minister of Public Service and Administration. We would have been done once we do that. Thank you very much.
So if you can cover everything, and then members will comment where they want to comment. Thanks, MEC.
Chair, on the transport last meeting or not. So I'm talking to the infrastructure portfolio. But I'm not going to follow the presentation word by word. I just want to say to you, one of the areas that makes me very proud and I'm very much happy about is the fact that we have established the Transport Infrastructure House at the height of COVID-19 last year. And we have reported to the Portfolio Committee about the activities of the Transport Infrastructure House and the fact that its main function really for us with the oversight function to ensure that we can deliver infrastructure in time and quality and at the right cost. The most important thing, Chair, I want to report to you is the fact that Can go into detail about that. In terms of dealing with, and one of those was that we didn't have a database of all our projects. We didn't have an infrastructure book. We were running projects that were fragmented all over the space. Now we have got a consolidated list of projects for the first time, each with a status, a clear indication of the budget. And we have actually dealt with a very important issue of project management discipline. And I want to link up with the point that Mr. Honorable Itoabe had raised earlier. The Transport Infrastructure House is supported by GMA. We approached GMA to say we've got difficulties with managing our infrastructure, and you are managing your infrastructure very well. Help us to improve on our infrastructure management. So the TIH, which is a virtual infrastructure house, is supported in terms of consultants by GMA. So GMA has seconded a team of consultants into the Transport Infrastructure House. And really a lot of good work has been done. And we also have set a process. And I'm pleased to say to you that the Transport Infrastructure House through GMA has now finalized a software for project management, which is based on the project management template of Microsoft. And that has been tailor-made to our environment. So it will mean the officials that are running our projects, the PSPs, the contractors, everybody is going to work according to a single template of project management, which is using a software, a very good software. It will help us to run projects in a coordinated way. The elephant in the room, which was affecting our projects, was supply chain. Supply chain was, and to a large extent, was the elephant in the room in the sense that we were unable to appoint an issue or issue letters of appointment or conclude a procurement process. That is why this department has not been cutting ribbons, has not been handing over roads, nothing, because there are no projects to run. So in a year in construction, they'll run one or two projects. So we've made good progress in the sense that reports, Chair. Initially, we were running a portfolio of projects. Let me take the 2019-2020 financial year. We were running about, we awarded about 4 projects only in that financial year. In 2020-2021, we awarded 5 projects. Currently, as I speak to you, Chair, we have awarded 12 projects. That is very much important. And you might be aware that in 2019-20, we had cancelled 5 tenders. In 2020-2021, we cancelled 9 projects at a value of 1.2 billion rands. Tenders cancelled. In the current financial year, and based on the work that the TIH has done, so from 1.2 billion projects cancelled, currently we're sitting at 0. There were tenders about 631 no, I've already spoken to. Most of our tenders were awarded through irregular appointments, non-compliance with the PFMA, and we have actually improved that. These are the tenders that were awarded through deviations. In 2019 to 20 financial year, the number of to 2021, those tenders again were almost of the same amount, awarded through irregular appointment or deviations. In this financial year, since we introduced the TIH, we have reduced our deviations from 993, almost $1 billion, to only 26 million. To only 26 million. So, Chair, I want to say to you that this talks to the work that the Transport Infrastructure House has done to troubleshoot the elephant in the room, which was weaknesses in supply chain. I also want to add that currently, Chair, we have managed to award tenders of about 1.2 billion to date. And by the end of March, the financial year, we will be running tenders of 3 billion. So, Chair, that should tell you that have been made by the Transport Infrastructure House. We are sitting at 1 billion supply chain awarded tenders, and by March we'll be sitting at 3 billion portfolio of projects that will be running, awarded to contractors. So that, Chair, it's a clear demonstration that we have opened the pipeline in supply chain, which was the biggest elephant in the room. But the Infrastructure Transport House still continue to improve project planning, project design, the construction delivery, and maintenance. In maintenance, we have introduced the Smart Mobility Weekends working with municipalities, tender for January next year. We should be having an app that you can download on Android. That is going to be a major, major game changer with respect to road maintenance. The last point, Chair, I want to say to you is that we have also introduced the drone technology. I don't think it's in the report, but we have introduced a very good technology to monitor our projects using the drones. And it also helps us to see what is going on construction sites. And the drone report is here. I have it. Maybe it was not put together for the purpose of this. We're already beginning to see non-compliance with road construction. Sites being poorly managed, no proper signage, protection of sites, digging of trenches, being left unprotected, putting motorists at risk. And we're also using the drone to monitor the road reserve, because we've got people that are occupying the road, that are staying on the road reserve. One of them is the Mamelodi, 2 roads that we're building in Mamelodi, where the department, for some reason, started construction on roads, that was even way before we came and yourselves, on a roads that were occupied. And they worked on an understanding that they were going to get land, move these people off the road. They did get land, but Treasury said we must hand over the land to human settlements and the city of Tshwane to relocate people. That has not happened to date, although the land was bought. So should we be, blaming how this was done? My focus is how do we deal with the challenge? We will go back to Treasury to say, look, maybe you must give us the mandate to relocate people back, because we have tried it, it's not working. But part of the project management template that we are bringing in, it includes what we call project readiness metrics. Is this project ready for delivery? And that includes ticking the boxes on land availability, land adequacy, and land constraints, including people being on the road reserve. So the issue of using technology, particularly the drone, it's already giving us very good results of showing us what's happening on the construction sites and how our sites are being poorly managed. And we will be demonstrating to the committee how the drone technology is helping us to view the sites and what is going on there. And that project has already started. We're not talking about something that we're still going to start. So, presentation, Chair, is that the Transport Infrastructure House is bringing much needed improvements into the delivery of the road network. The last point I want to conclude on is K46 William Nicol, and that is in the report as well. Chair, William Nicol, we have appointed a service provider. Payment of people has also started. The only difficulty we had was that prior to the local government elections, there were a lot of protests on the ground in which people were trying to get employment, get subcontracting and all that, and they stopped the projects. And that happened on the eve of local government elections. We then said, let's wait for local government elections to pass, because we were also aware that people were using the local government elections to campaign, to politic, some political parties, some of them in this room, using projects as a platform for political mobilization. So to that extent, Chair, we then said, let's wait for local government elections to pass. But sellers that do not know whether they're coming in or not, that also causes instability. So on the 3rd of, December, there was a meeting with the new councillors, briefings and discussions on how the project should continue. But as you are aware, Chair, we are at the end of the year, and 16 December and 16 January is a dead period in construction happening. We have a new PSP. So the PSP that was there for the previous project was terminated. We have brought in a new PSP with Steyn City. So we're working with Steyn City, and the PSP is appointed, and it's a contribution by Steyn City, which is our partner. Chair, in terms of the timelines, early next year, I will go to Gfleet at the beginning of the year to address communities, and of course, it's going to depend on COVID-19, because I plan to go now, but spent to demonstrate in rents and cents how have they achieved 30% local spend, so that when we go to the community meeting, we can explain who are the subcontractors and how 30% has been in terms of commitments. Obviously, your 30% spend is over the life cycle of the project. It's not a once-off thing. So you achieve it here, you move in the milestones, and you achieve 30%. But we need the contract and the PSP to demonstrate to us. And this issue of 30% spend, it's a big area of confusion, because sometimes people think 30% spend means only spending money with subcontractors and laborers of one area, as in, a ward, for example. So we are dealing with that issue to indicate 30% to designated groups will be achieved like this. Because some people say, show us where have you spent 30%? It's not something that you spend at once. So the William Nicol matter, I'm happy that we have awarded the contract, and we are managing community disruptions and community protests, and I'm quite sure that we'll have implications of what are the dynamics on the ground and what's happening there. It was important to invite you so that the committee is fully aware of what's going on the ground. The last one is the agreed, and a closed tender process is on. We will be appointing a service provider to sort out that sinkhole. And one of the issues that have affected our work on the sinkhole has been the farmers that lives in the area. They've been refusing us access to get access to the site. But as matters stand, we are sorting out the supply chain to appoint a service provider to deal with that sinkhole. So it will be attended to. In conclusion, the Transport Infrastructure House has only been set in almost July, August 2020. There's no way that in a year it could have solved all the problems. It's not possible. The problems of infrastructure in this department are very deep. We are seeing some good progress, but it doesn't mean all problems have been solved. My appeal and plea to the committee is give the Transport Infrastructure House an opportunity, rated its impact. Please give it the opportunity to do its work. I mean, we managed in less than 6 months, 21 projects in Mfuleni, done to best quality, handed over and quality confirmed. That was because of the efficiencies in the Transport Infrastructure House. So it doesn't mean everything is okay, but I can assure the committee things are no longer the same. And we are set for a better, if not best, infrastructure delivery processes. If there's any issue I didn't touch upon, okay, there's another project, Chair, project, Chair, just simple that we have incurred irregular expenditure on that project. Scope creep and new cost, and Treasury has said these extra costs you have incurred are declared irregular. So I've just commissioned an investigation on who was responsible for causing us irregular expenditure on the project. The project is almost 90% complete. But to complete it, the officials have come back and said, we need another extra money on top of the irregular expenditure incurred. So the decision we have made is that because we are commissioning an investigation on the irregular expenditure committed already, any other extra expenditure will fit into that investigation. So we must be able to give them extra money to complete the road. Because if we don't, the road will never be completed. And we are just engaging Treasury, giving them notice that we are going to incur more, but we have already commissioned an investigation through the Office of the Premier. So that, Chair, should conclude the presentation.
No, thanks, MEC. Thanks for that. I think if anybody is, yeah. So let me just check on the items that the MEC has spoken to. We said just continue and finish everything. If there's any comments, questions, anything that anybody wants to raise, let's raise them now so that once we're finished with this, we can then release the MEC. Member Mabunda, Member Nell, Member Duplessis, and Member Litwaba. And Member Ndlovana will finish off. Thanks. Member Mabunda.
No, thanks, Chair. I think I will want to, in part, agree with the MEC on the project readiness matrix and how the TIH is supposed to assist the department. Because meetings that it presented, I was so elated in terms of how they had envisioned that they will be working in terms of the report they presented of the project, the value, the anticipated completion date. It made sense. And from what the MEC is saying, as a result of the intervention of the Transport Infrastructure House, it's a report we are receiving, and if indeed it is, it surely shows progress. I, however, have problems on your presentation, MEC, particularly on the last part of your presentation. You know, if you look at the jobs created, those figures out there, if you look at number 5, is it K54, construction of, you are anticipating to create 28,000 jobs. I just don't understand what will be the scientific, or how did we calculate those figures that we came to and thinking that in one project we can create 28,000 jobs. I think some of these and issues that we present to the committee, sometimes we don't need to put up there. It will be fine, you give us the total contract value, but those, I don't think it's necessary, MEC. Let your staff not put you up, especially if you are going to present. You spoke about the software, the project management software that the department has introduced. I would want to ask MEC, do you have a communication section in the department? Yes. Because I have never heard at any point, I mean, I will hear health, I will hear other departments talking of their achievements on media, but I have never heard anybody from, I don't even know your spokesperson.
Got my email address and sent this to me, so I'm not sure if it's the same individuals, but that's the one that was sent through to us, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Let me welcome the thorough presentation from the MEC. I think I'm better clarified today with regard to the Transport Infrastructure House. I did not for the past year understand what is it exactly that it wants to achieve. But after having said everything, it goes to the fact that it's a PMO, Project Management Office. And I would recall that around 2019, where we were referring, you did emphasize on the fact that there is no PMO. Beyond that, I don't know, but I think it goes to the fact that it's a PMO where you have got all your projects in one basket. You are able to view, know what is happening. And if that is the case, I welcome that. The only difficulty is that how were they operating before? If you've got different projects that are not centrally coordinated. And some of these major projects are program management projects. They're not just minute projects where you do 5 million rand and you move on. That is an area of concern, particularly when, Chair, we know that these are technical projects that should be run mainly by qualified. Yeah, so that is one angle, Chair, which is a good thing. But now I'm saying I understand we are talking about the PMO. It be a standalone unit where projects are monitored, follow-ups are done, and the centralization of everything. Because what you said, Chair, is that they have sourced in a skill from GMA, which could be a temporary intervention mechanism. But to be honest with you, you need full-time professionals to run a PMO. In all established companies, they do have a PMO that is standalone, that runs all these major projects. Something that I thought. There are legacy projects that we've been talking about. And these legacy projects should find space so that when we say these are the projects that we have closed, or these are the projects that we're having challenges, are we making reference of those that we know when we came in 2019, we found and are still problematic? K54 in passing. I think reference should be made around K69, etc., etc. Now I want to zoom into those specific projects to say, to what extent is this infrastructure, transport infrastructure project assisting us to deal with these specific projects, including your Sebokeng DLTC, your Ferenchen intermodal facility. So let's zoom into K54 as something that we do not necessarily, or it does not necessarily impinge on this infrastructure house. to say in 2019, when we raised the matters of Skrillex informal settlement in Mamelodi, you remember there were terms that were supposed to go there, etc., etc. Even now, the situation has not changed. Not because we are not aware, not because the infrastructure house has brought something to our attention. It is something that we've been belaboring for the past 2 years. In the last meeting, we were told that the matter has been escalated to the Premier's office. Then the question would be, what exact department expect the Premier to do? I want to align myself with the view that some of the people have already been relocated to Moy Plus. Of course, the number is not significant. I want to bring to attention that I personally took the matter to the Human Settlement Division when we were told that this matter has been referred to Human Settlement Division, and there were talks between the two departments. But nothing significant is coming out of that. We complained about the running cost. I'm going to close with K46 and respond to the insinuation that was made. That when this portfolio in 2019 did an oversight visit at River, is it Riverside, what do you call River, whatever, we met with the SMMEs. We went there, we did a physical oversight. At the time, there were challenges that people were not paid, SMMEs were not paid, laborers were not changed from the Luba construction company with whatever that happened. Since that time, we've been following, I would say personally, I've been following up on this matter to say there are contractors, SMMEs that were not paid. And then you did indicate from your side in one of the questions that I raised that there was a legal company that's appointed to deal with those matters. And then we were told at some point in time that all of them were paid. Only last week we were told that there's another company that was not paid. That I want to bring to our attention. In terms of the interpretation of the law, in one of the meetings, I remember it was PG, he said there are new regulations from Treasury that says that 30% in terms of interpretation does not necessarily mean people who reside in Diepsloot, if I were to make a K46 as an example. It will take any South African across the country who qualifies. It is not necessarily something new. But what makes matters difficult now is when the new contractor is appointed and he doesn't find those SMMEs that we found here, that none of them is accommodated. And Chair, we can't deem that to be a political intervention by another body. When some of us, we don't even know these MMSs, we found them in the system. But when Slim comes, he doesn't accommodate them. What do we expect us to do? Because we're told with the new regulations, when a company applies for a tender, they must enlist that 30% of the SMMEs. That is what we're told by the department at the time. But it's not happening. And the company says, I'm not obliged to incorporate anyone from that particular community. So you are just creating problems for yourself. Because you are going to have another 2-3 years. I'm just saying, I want to give context to what you were saying when you were insinuating to say there were other political parties, including myself here. Yes, I know about it. Those MMEs, I came to know about them in 2019. I don't even know them now, but I know because I asked question, which ones? If there are new developments, that would be good so that you are able to deal with that. Member Mabunda spoke about communications and everything, just for your share. If you were to Google the department's website and everything, it's like you will still find Mampuru as the acting HOD. There is nothing new. It is not updated. We had a meeting with one of the communications person in the past. We raised these matters. It is something that I don't know what is it that the department needs to do, but it needs to be looked into. Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Member Ndlobona.
Thanks, Chair. Let me first appreciate presentation from the MEC in terms of clarifying some of the issues. Two of them, they've been covered, Chair, particularly the issue of the legacy project of K54, because maybe it will create another extension level. Already, there are certain businesses which are builded in that particular area. That's my major concern with regard to that. How is it builded in the TIH? Then the second issue is with regard to, I'm covered in the website with regard to marketing and advertising of the department on the issues which we are achieving as the Department of Transport, Roads and Transport. Like previously, I think the MEC, even the chair, attended some of the events which were done. Those things are not even in the website of the department, so that people should be able to know that our potholes during our elections were visited. Then lastly, Chair, you know, when you do the calculations of the allocation of the job creation in a project, I think that calculation should be clearly presented to us. When you are asking, when a person asks you a question that, how did you derived at the 54 job created by K54, P39 or K69, so that you should be able to explain. I mean, the SMMEs and all political parties, they've got the interest on this project. How many jobs have they created? And lastly, let us share our small achievements and also the progress in terms of the projects. It's important. It's important to know that. I'll pause there. Thanks, Chair.
No, thanks, members. Just a comment of mine. I would like to, I think, echo what Member Nell has raised about the existing road next to the K46. I think I did raise it previously, earlier this year, but it is in a very bad condition. But at least if the potholes can be filled. Particularly, there's a low-lying bridge as you come from Four-Way side, past the shopping centre towards the JMPD office and the police station. It's very bad on that section. But I wanted to just, on a slightly lighter side, indicate that when that road is completed, I'll be the first one there to open a bottle of champagne. And I'll tell you why, MEC. In 2004, the Randburg constituency office, which I was part of, together with Joe Bukaba, we went to the then MEC, who's now the late Ignatius Jacobs. And there were 3 roads in the Randburg area that we asked to have upgraded. The one was Malibongwe through to Lanseria Airport. The second was Bayers Nordia, upgraded through to Zandspray, double lane either side. And the third was this road. Part of it was done, and when this is completed, then I can phone Joe Bukaba and say to him, hey, your roads are all finished now. And that's why I'm saying it has a history, it goes back to 2004, and I think when it's completed, it will be a milestone for the area, because that's delivery of government on 3 major roads in the area. So I thought I'd just share that. As a committee, we'd want to go and witness and see this contract, the contract at work, the construction taking place, and finally being completed, because it'll make a huge difference to not only the community of Diepsloot, but to community. So yeah, just wanted to say you have our support, and we really hope that we see that road being completed as soon as possible. Thanks. MEC, over to you. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I think thanks for this positive feedback and the complimentary comments that were made. I really appreciate that. I've had a lot of first times. So even with me, I want to say first time that the portfolio committee, at least on the infrastructure space, we're getting a positive comment, first time. I missed all the reports we have been trying to present. First time, the driver is saying that first time he understands. So that is highly commendable. I think we're turning the corner on the work that we are doing. Now, the fact that you appreciate, you mustn't be embarrassed that you appreciate.
No. I'm saying you're talking about the PMO using a different name. So now I say I understand because I know what a PMO does. Not those things that we say infrastructure house. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
there is no order.
I
I'm
don't know
saying no.
what Honorable
I know what I'm talking about.
But the driver, can we allow the ANC?
No, I'm correcting him, Chair. No, I'm correcting him. No, but I'm correcting him. Okay. So it is not true what you are saying. It's not. No, it's not true what he's saying. Okay.
In any way, Chair, that doesn't change the point I was making. I think, Honorable Mabunda, the issue of doing a positive multiplier effect of a project and what benefits it will bring, including the jobs and whether those numbers that have been put there are correct or not. I have no reason to doubt them, but we can go relook at them. You'll see that that project is about 2 billion, and there are projects of 400,000 that are doing 5,000 jobs or so. So, but the point I'm making, Chair, is that we will go check that. There's no need to go hard into that. I was just demonstrating that I have no reason to commission an investigation into those numbers. They look okay for me. If you also look at the fact that that project is going to run over 18 years, I mean, the multiplier effect is calculated over 18 years. So the other issue, Chair, I just want to raise is I think your point about Deepsley, Honorable Nell, we will go and do the temporary relief because I think that's what both of you are calling for. That whilst we are building that road, we do temporary relief and try to help the people there. So that I think we will do. We have heard you on that. We will be able to deal with that issue. And I think the point that Honorable Ndovana is making about marketing the department and claiming our victories, however small they might be, for purposes of communicating with the community, that is okay. We will improve on them, particularly as it relates to the road infrastructure. I've already said to the officials that next year our focus is on the road network. And we will improve communication insofar as the work we are doing on the road network is concerned. Maybe we have not been singing our own praises a lot because sometimes and yeah, I hear you, we need to communicate with the people, and I think Honorable Mabunda raised that issue as well. The people occupying the road network are matters that we will better manage and look at that because some of these roads were declared long time ago that there will be a road here, but there's never been monitoring of people living on that space. So it's a matter we will look into and improve on it. I think, Chair, in general, the comments that have been made are definitely taken in good spirit, Honorable Mabunda. I think that constructive criticism on our communication point, it's accepted and it's taken. I don't want to go any further, Chair, than to this extent that we have really improved our capacity to deliver infrastructure, and I think we will start seeing results very soon. By the way, Chair, the issues of Vereeniging and taxi rank, we've already made a public announcement that we have appointed GMA as the delivery agents because we're dealing with an intermodal facility there, and they built the best. So we can DLTC, we will be taking over this function because DLTCs are transport infrastructure. And we will be dealing with this matter inside the Transport Infrastructure House. So I'd like to leave it here, Chair, and that the issues of people on the road reserve and the structures that are there, we will make sure that we attend to them and complete them. But otherwise, positive feedback, thanks a lot. This is highly appreciated, and we will improve our infrastructure delivery. And we will continue to update you, Chair, on where we are on these issues. Let me leave it here, Chair. Thanks a lot.
No, thanks, MEC, and thanks for the responses. I think that this session with yourself today has been very useful in many respects. We want to appreciate you being available for us today. Thank you very much. I know
Can I raise a complaint?
Yeah, sure.
I must also raise complaints against the committee. So that it's not only the committee that raises issues. I must also raise mine that, you see, Chair, firstly, let me congratulate you and the committee for a good meeting. Thanks a lot. But, you know, when we have had a good meeting, and like today, and we have discussed and clarified issues, can I plead that in the next 2 meetings, at least 3, 4 meetings, we move from the basis that we have had a good meeting, and therefore we don't find ourselves, you know, having discussions as if we didn't have and starting afresh. So let's maintain the good meeting. The consistency is very important, Chair, with respect to appreciating that we have had a good meeting. So all I'm appealing for is we have had a good meeting. Let's have the next 2 or 3 good meetings, Chair. I'm just appealing. I hope that will not be taken out of context, Chair.
I don't. Oh, no, thanks. Yes, withdraw.
No, as I was saying, that it's been very useful. We've had you on a number of areas. So we want to thank you, MEC, for making this time available, although we had agreed last week that you would join us. Yeah. And I know there were other competing things that you had as well, but we appreciate the fact that you've spent the time and you've been available to listen to members of the committee, that the members have been able to raise things that they've wanted to raise and have been able to get the clarity they've got. And I think that for us is so extremely helpful.
Does it mean we'll see this in the debate on the annual report? Is that what, am I right to have an expectation that
No.
all members?
Yeah, wanted to, so I think I've said the first part that I wanted to say. This is probably the last engagement we have with you this year, other than a debate next week, which I guess is also an engagement in a way. But this is the last formal meeting that we're having this year, and the last one with you. So, one would want to firstly thank you for the time that you've made to attend, and we want to say thank you to you, and also say thank you to your officials who've attended when you've instructed them, requested them to attend. And I think this process of regular engagement and happy and joyful festive season over the Christmas period, the December period. Wish you well, hope you'll be able to take a break, and we look forward to our engagements with you next year, and travelling this road of continuing to. So wish you well, and all the best for the new year as well, and trust that you have a good break in December. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
MEC,
Chair.
and I hope
As long
you-
as
you see- Honourable members, I think we've dealt with probably what for us was an important part of this session. We do have items still to deal with, and I'll take your hand now, Member Mabunda. Did you? Oh, sorry. Okay. We've got I think we just efficiently in this next section. So I believe there's lunch available, but it's until 2 o'clock. Until 2. And now it's 20 to 2. So I need your guidance, because we need to we need to at least discuss the reports that have been, the committee report on the annual report, draft committee report on the second quarter. Those reports were distributed. We've got minutes as well that they were only distributed yesterday, that we need to look at and adopt. The resolutions tracking, proposed FIST topics, and then the rest is just mundane matters. So I need your guidance to handle this, given time constraints for lunch as well. Member Mabunda?
I will suggest we go for lunch maybe for 20 minutes, 2 o'clock we come back and adopt the reports.
I thought it will be done by 2 o'clock because I must go and collect the clothes for the wedding.
Or we can also adopt the reports. I mean, we all receive the reports in time, and then the minutes, we can formally adopt them. Yeah, we can.
Can I check with members? You're correct, Member Mabunda. The draft committee report on the annual report. If we've all read them, there's no need for the committee section to take us through it. So may I check on where's Tembiso? Are you here? So may I check on the draft committee on the annual report? Is there anybody that would want to move for the adoption of the report? Member Mabunda?
I want to suggest that both reports, the administrator must just check the spellings. I saw some few spellings that needs to be correct, but I mean, we can't sit down and word to word correct spellings, but otherwise I want to move for the adoption of the report.
One. I don't have a problem with either one, but just for procedure's sake, but I will move for the annual report, Chair.
I second it.
Sorry, in terms of the draft committee report on Q2. Is there a mover for the adoption of the report?
I do move, Chairperson,
Thank
for
you,
the
Mem-
adoption of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Dolly Lidwaba, for the records. It's not the other Lidwaba. Member Du Plessis.
I'll second that.
Both draft reports have been adopted, and as indicated by Member Mabunda, we just need to check on the issues of spelling. Also, over the weekend, just go through them again and just see what else I can pick up. So thank you for that. In terms of the minutes, honourable members, those were only distributed yesterday. I can say from my side, I've read all of them. I went through all of them. To me, they seem to fairly accurately reflect the proceedings of the meetings, but I don't know if anybody else has gone through them. Member Mabunda?
I went through them and agree that they fairly represent our discussion, and I will want to move for the adoption of those minutes.
Okay, so there's a mover for the adoption of all the minutes. That's the 19th of August, the 27th of August, the 1st of September, the 10th of November, and the 25th of November. So I think Member Mamuda is moving for the adoption of all the minutes. Is there a seconder?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Member Du Plessis. So I think we've dealt with the minutes. Thank you, members, and thank you for your intervention. Otherwise, we would have been sitting here for a lot longer. Can I just check then that I think that is really for information? Am I right, Mr. Mbiso? There's nothing that we were required to adopt or anything like that. It was to present to us there. So I think we've got that. And it's clearly indicated here at the committee meeting. So can we take it that we individually read that in our next committee meeting? If we're in agreement, we will deal with the responses and assess the responses, and those responses not received, and they would want us to proceed on the first topics. Member Nell?
Chair, how urgent is it? Because we probably won't get to them before next year, I would assume. Is it not possible for the committee to rather maybe have an early meeting next year?
I'll be guided by this meeting. It's Member Mabunda, sorry.
Yeah, I think I agree with Member Nel. I don't see any urgency of it now. It's obvious it was going to be dealt with next year. And if so, I agree. Let's leave it for next year.
May I then suggest that in the interim, we ask the committee coordinator, Stembiso, to distribute the proposed topics so that we're able to have a look at them and that we converse on the topics. So I think then if we're agreeable on that, we can distribute the proposed topics and then we will deal with it early next year. Then I'm just trying to help get this agenda through quickly. I think the other items, let me run through it quickly so that we don't waste time. 8, 9, 10, there's nothing there on NCOP bills, petitions, correspondence, there's nothing. We had agreed when we adopted the committee program, we had agreed that not next week, the following week. It's still a constituency week. We had agreed that we would take one day in that week to continue visits to municipal run DLTCs. Now, I'm sure we're all aware that certainly in the metros, I don't think they've appointed mayoral committees as yet. It would make it very difficult for us to go and, well, we can decide if we want to go ahead and visit municipal run DLTCs. These are provincial DLTCs in the Tshwane area. So they've proposed here 3 DLTCs, provincial run DLTCs, that we go and visit. This is all in terms of as to how well capacitated and the state of readiness to deal with this possible influx of applications or requests for slots for driver's licenses to be renewed by the deadline of the 31st of March. So the 3 centres that they have proposed is the Temba DLTC, the Mabopane DLTC, and the Watloo DLTC. So I just need to then get guidance from the committee whether you'd still want to proceed with those, and if so, we just need to agree on one of the days of that, the week following next. Remember now?
Yeah, Chair, I'm sure the Watloo one actually belongs to Tshwane. But an alternative could be if we could maybe visit the new RTMC one, which is in Echo Park in Centurion, I think, and maybe also use the opportunity to maybe engage with RTMC at the same time a little bit. But I'll leave it up to you. If it's possible, let's do it. If it's not possible, we can always postpone to next year. But that, because it's one of the new ones that's just been introduced, so it might be worthwhile having a look at a good practice versus the other practices.
The program is a working program. We can change where necessary. So I just need guidance from yourselves. Do you want us to proceed, or do we hold this over until early next year? I'll be guided by yourself, members. Member Ledwaba.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's advisable that continue next year, because the President will be saying something. We don't know what is it that he's going to say. And then I think it...
I think there's a proposal that says let's hold it over till next in January sometime, because the deadline for the extension of renewal of licenses is 31st of March, and we've revisited 3 or 2, and we would need to do a few more visits so that we get a thorough understanding as to where there's bottlenecks, backlogs, and then be able to raise what we think needs to be raised urgently. So I think on that note, there's agreement. I think there's a sense, let's hold it over till next year. So, honourable members, then that brings us to the end of this agenda. May I also take this opportunity, it's our last formal interaction. May I take this opportunity of thanking all of you for your support and for your participation in the committee meetings, the oversight visits that have taken place, certainly since February this year. It's never easy when you get put into something that's new, but I really want to appreciate the support. It's been great working with all of you, and I'd like to take this opportunity of wishing all of you trust that you and your families will be able to take a break and will be able to rest and refresh yourselves, and wish each of you all the very best for the new year. May I also thank the committee support team. I'm not going to thank everybody for their support, for their work, and the efforts that they've put in. It's helped make the committee program flow a lot easier. So to all of you, we wish you a very pleasant festive season. Take a break, rest well, and wish each of you all the very best. So on that note, we'll meet in the House, or virtually I think, next week Thursday for the debate. But on that note, honourable members, the committee meeting is adjourned, and we'll meet again next year formally. I think lunch is in the dining room. Where we had breakfast. Yeah, so lunch is at the same place we would have had breakfast this morning. Thank you very much, members. Thank you.